Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this retrospective. Today I am going through the multi-platform releases for 2015. So this covers stuff that mostly came out on the Xbox One and PS4, but there's probably some Wii U or 3DS stuff in there too. If you haven't seen my retrospectives before, I go through my collection and I go through the stuff that came out that year or for that console in release order just to kind of get a grasp on what came out, see what games I missed or need to check out, and I like to do this as a way to share all of these great games with people who may not have heard of them before. So let's start off with the first notable game for the year. For PS4 and Xbox One, we got Saints Row 4 Re-Elected and Gat Out of Hell. This compilation is an update to Saints Row 4, and it's bundled on disc with the previous week's release, Saints Row Gat Out of Hell. Re-Elected is basically a port of last-gen Saints Row 4 game that includes all the DLC. Gat Out of Hell is a standalone title that takes place after Saints Row 4 and has the player controlling Johnny Gat in Hell. Instead of the Matrix-like powers of the last game, Gat unlocks a ton of demon powers to help him take out the demon lords of Hell, and gets cool traversal abilities like wings to help him move through the world. Following that, for Xbox One and PS4, we got Dying Light. This is a first-person open-world zombie game similar to the developer's previous game Dead Island. The game has an emphasis on parkour and traversal. Combat is still mostly melee-based, but the analog control scheme from Dead Island isn't included because it didn't fit with the new traversal controls. That change turned a lot of Dead Island fans off the game, despite it being basically a spiritual successor. Right after that, we got Evolve for Xbox One and PS4. This is an online team-based first-person shooter by the creators of Left 4 Dead. In each round, one player controls a giant monster, and the 4 remaining players control a squad that goes up against it. The game has 20 characters split up into 4 different classes. Evolve launched with 3 monsters, but 2 more were added later through DLC. The game was hyped at release, but that died down pretty quickly. I remember a lot of people complaining about the cost of additional DLC and the limited content within the game, so I'm not sure if that was a factor or if the gameplay just didn't have legs. Next up, for Xbox One and PS4 as well, we got this gen's version of Dead or Alive, subtitled Last Round. This is the latest update to Dead or Alive 5, which brings it to current gen consoles. The game includes all characters from the previous release, and adds Raido and Hanukkah as new characters along with their stages. Next up is the physical release of Resident Evil Revelations 2. The complete collection of the episodic survival horror game sees the return of Claire and Barry, who are each teamed up with new partners as they explore an abandoned facility where typical biohazard stuff is going on. Each episode lets you play a bit as Claire and a bit as Barry with their partners, and your items are carried over between episodes, which lets you grind up items in one episode to have more for the next one, but works with the structure of the game where you can replay episodes with different difficulties and settings. Definitely a Resident Evil game worth checking out if you like the older ones. Next up, a game that got a fair amount of hype for the series, Dragon Ball Xenoverse. This is another 3D fighting game based on the anime, but this time featuring a really different direction for its design. It apparently borrows a lot from the Japanese Dragon Ball Online game and the arcade title Dragon Ball Heroes. The game lets players create a custom character and play through a new story mode, in which they work with future Trunks to fix issues with the original Dragon Ball Z timeline. There are 5 available playable races, including Saiyans, Namekins, Earthlings, Majins, and Frieza's race. Outside of the main story mode, there is also 40 playable characters. And next up, also for PS4 and Xbox One, is DMC Devil May Cry, the Definitive Edition. This is basically just an update of last gen's game for this generation. The Definitive Edition of Ninja Theory's Devil May Cry reboot includes all the DLC, new costumes, and a new manual targeting system. Next up is Battlefield Hardline. The FPS war franchise moves to a city with the players taking on the role of either police or criminals in Miami. The game promised a non-linear story mode with different exciting situations. The multiplayer was considered good with 5 modes focusing on the themes of cops versus criminals in the city. Overall, a decent attempt to be different from the parent franchise, but I don't think it quite lived up to the expectations. And right after that, a game in a series I collect every title for, so I had to get both. This is the steel case from the special edition of the PS4, and this is the regular Xbox One version. This is Final Fantasy Type 0 HD. This is an update to the Japanese-only PSP game that shows a world of technology and magic at war. The main characters are the students of a class at a special school whose memories are erased after missions. The gameplay is more action-oriented than a traditional Final Fantasy battle system, and each playable member of the class has unique weapons and abilities. The game does look like an up-res PSP game, and the motion blur makes it really hard to play, but the characters and story are pretty interesting. After that, another compilation for PS4 and Xbox One. This is Borderlands: The Handsome Collection. This is a collection of Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel, both of which have been updated for modern consoles. The collection contains all previous DLC for both games, and still includes split screen and online 4-player co-op. This is a good way for people to check out the pre-sequel who had already moved on to new consoles when that was released. Right after that, another update for modern consoles, Dark Souls 2: The Scholar of First Sin comes out for PS4 and Xbox One. This is basically just an update of last gen's Dark Souls 2. It includes some rebalancing that makes the game actually a bit harder, and bundles in the 3 DLC packs that were released after launch. Then Mortal Kombat 10 or X. The follow-up to the popular Mortal Kombat reboot moves the story ahead 20 years, revealing what happened in the aftermath of the last game, and seeing the survivors fighting to keep Quan Chi from freeing the fallen Elder God Shinnok. The game launched with 24 characters and introduced 8 new characters, including Cassie Cage, who's Sonya and Johnny's daughter, Jackie Briggs, who's Jax's daughter, Takeda, who is the son of Kenshi, Devora, the new insect lady, Ferrator, the Master Blaster-like duo, Kotal Khan, the new ruler of Outworld, Kung Jin, the Shaolin archer, and Aaron Black, who's a Dark Tower-like gunslinger. Gameplay is similar to the previous titles and the Injustice games, and features the now expected cinematic story mode, tower challenges, online battles, and a crypt full of unlockables. New gameplay elements are a special meter, and different variations for characters which switch up their style and moves. There's also new quitalities and faction fatalities. Right after that, we got a physical version of Wolfenstein: The Old Blood for PS4 and Xbox One. This is a standalone expansion to Wolfenstein that also had a digital release. It's worth noting that this game was bundled with the main game and released together later on, so you can get that physically. Overall, the expansion didn't get as much praise as the original game, mostly because as a prequel it took place in Germany in the mid-40s and contains little of what made the last game so special. Following that, for PS4 and Xbox One, we got Project Cars. CARS actually stands for Community Assisted Racing Simulator, and the game tried to create a different kind of racing experience. This game focused on realistic physics and courses with different paths that cater to different vehicle types. The game has over 70 cars and over 110 courses, and features multi-race events. Right after that, a game you definitely would have heard about if you were watching awards that year, we got The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. In this title, the Witcher series finally goes full open world and is released on both consoles. The game sees Geralt of Rivia traveling the world looking for Ciri, a character from the novels who is central to the story's plot involving the Wild Hunt. Along the way, you can find tons of side missions with interesting situations to solve and creatures to kill. Overall, a huge step forward for the franchise and for Western RPGs in general. Right after that is The Elder Scrolls Online for PS4 and Xbox One. This is an MMORPG set in the Elder Scrolls universe. The game takes place about 1,000 years before Skyrim, Oblivion, and Morrowind, but has some story elements that tie into those games. This isn't something I played, but I do know a lot of people who were into it and found it to be an overall pretty good MMO. Right after that, LEGO Jurassic World, which came out for 360, Xbox One, PS3, PS4, Wii U, and 3DS. This is the first LEGO game of the year, and as always I mention all of these because they're just good fun games and great for anybody. But there's so many of them, you should really just focus on the franchises you love the most. This one has 20 levels, with 5 for each of the 4 movies. Right after that, another update, Payday 2 Crimewave Edition is an updated version of last gen's multiplayer heist game. This includes all the previous DLC heist characters and weapons. And next up, the last in the trilogy, Batman Arkham Knight for PS4 and Xbox One. This game steps up the open world from Arkham City and, for better or worse, adds the Batmobile as a vehicle the player can use in either pursuit or battle mode to get around the city or take down enemies. Other than the Batmobile mechanics, the main game plays about the same as the previous one, with a new story involving the Scarecrow teaming up with the mysterious Arkham Knight to take on Batman. After that, we get BlazBlue Chrono Phantasma Extend for PS4 and Xbox One. This is an updated version of BlazBlue Chrono Phantasma that was released on PS3 and Vita, and is itself a port of the arcade game. This is considered the third main game in the BlazBlue series, and this extended version adds 2 new characters with extra story content. Next up is Toy Soldiers War Chest, which I believe came out on Xbox One and PS4. This is an interesting follow-up to the lesser-known XBLA title Toy Soldiers and Toy Soldiers Cold War. War Chest takes the action strategy gameplay of those Toy Soldiers games and adds in 3 new base armies as well as 4 new armies based on licensed toy franchises that include G.I. Joe, He-Man, and Assassin's Creed. Following that, a collection a lot of people were hyped for, the Mega Man Legacy Collection. This contains the 6 NES Mega Man games with various display options and a gallery. It also includes a challenges mode, which lets you play through various mini challenges based on the 6 games. This was released for PS4, Xbox One, and 3DS. Another update, Dishonored Definitive Edition. This updates last gen's Dishonored game and adds in the Knife of Dunwall and Brigmore Witches DLC. They take place after the main game and have the player controlling a villain from the main campaign, so worth checking out if you didn't try those. Next up, a big Toys to Life platform update, Disney Infinity 3.0. The third Disney Infinity game has the gameplay redesigned by developer Ninja Theory and is a real step up from the previous titles in terms of combat. The main new franchise here is Star Wars, with the base game featuring content from the prequel trilogy and PAX release covering the original trilogy and The Force Awakens, as well as other DLC with Clone Wars and Rebels. Sadly, the game was discontinued before Rogue One content was finished, so we didn't see anything past that. Along with the Star Wars stuff, there's new Pixar and Marvel figures, as well as some figures from Tron, Alice Through the Looking Glass, and Mickey and Minnie figures. Overall, a pretty sad end to the game is really getting up there, but, you know, the way the whole genre went, it's kind of expected. After that, we got Mad Max for Xbox One and PS4. This is an open world game with a different Mad Max than the Fury Road movie character. It has the player traveling through the Wasteland in their car, taking out enemies and their bases while completing certain missions. The game has a big focus on taking out other vehicles with your own, and features many upgrades for your car. The melee combat system works a lot like the Batman Arkham system. So right after that is Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. This came out for PS4, PS3, Xbox One, and Xbox 360. This is the big release MGS fans were waiting for, hampered by all the issues Konami was having and Kojima leaving, but it still ended up being a pretty incredible game. The game takes place years after Ground Zeroes and fills in some story between Peace Walker and Metal Gear. The new open world mission based structure turned out to work really well, and the gameplay possibilities are endless with the rule set and items created for the game. Overall, a must play for fans of the stealth action genre. It does kind of open up a bit slower as you don't have many abilities to help you get around the huge landscapes, but once you get that stuff under control, it becomes just an incredibly fun game. I highly recommend it if you haven't played it. Then, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Now this is the physical release of the acclaimed adventure game where you control 2 brothers working in tandem to get through the world and find a cure for their father's illness. Each brother is controlled by one of the thumbsticks and an action button, and a lot of the puzzles and challenges revolve around controlling both brothers at the same time to progress. It's a short game with interesting gameplay and an emotional story that definitely stands out. Then, The Book of Unwritten Tales 2, a classic point-and-click adventure game with a fantasy theme and the sequel to the PC-only original. The game has a focus on humor where the player controls 4 different characters who team up to take down a magical force that's causing havoc all over the kingdom. The game features side quests which unlock additional costume choices for the characters as well. And right after that is Skylanders SuperChargers. In this game, vehicles come to Skylanders, and that just means twice as many figures to collect. The game allows players to pair any character with any vehicle, but they'll get a bonus for putting the right character in the vehicle he's supposed to be in. The game has land, sea, and air vehicles, and the traditional action RPG-like gameplay that the series is known for. And a new Toys to Life platform, LEGO Dimensions. A mashup of the LEGO games and a Toys to Life concept, this game brings a ton of franchises in. The game has the player using LEGO characters and objects that can be brought into the game, as well as expansions that add new worlds to the game based on popular franchises. The gameplay is similar to previous LEGO titles, but designed to use the toys. Aside from the novel concept of getting a cool Lego set with every update, what makes this game really stand out is the sheer amount of fun franchises involved. It's got the expected stuff from the previous Lego games like DC, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, but it's also got really niche stuff like Gremlins, Ghostbusters, Doctor Who, Powerpuff Girls, Adventure Time, Simpsons, and more. So definitely a fun concept. I didn't really get into this one because I was really burned out on Toys to Life by that point, but it really seems like a cool idea. Right after that, for Xbox One and PS4, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Notable as maybe my biggest letdown of the generation. Tony Hawk is back, and with a numbered version no less. For those who didn't game during the PS1 era, Tony Hawk was a force. It was an incredibly fun, stylish, insane skateboarding game that had no equal. The series suffered from some bad decisions with its later entries, and was pretty much on hiatus until Activision tried to get one more last game out before the license expired. It features some terrible game design, and is one of the buggiest high-profile titles ever. Just don't even bother, but if you are interested in the series, pick up one of the older titles. And right after that, Rock Band 4, which came out for Xbox One and PS4. Harmonix brought out Rock Band for this generation in a really interesting way. The game ditches the Pro instruments from Rock Band 3, including the Pro Guitar and Pro Keyboard, but it lets you use your existing standard guitars, drums, and microphone, including the Guitar Hero guitars that worked before. You could also move over all the DLC you purchased previously. Peripherals and content could only be moved from PS3 to PS4 or from Xbox 360 to Xbox One. And sadly, because of the changes to the Xbox One version, which a lot of people had, you needed an adapter to use the old instruments. That came bundled with the Day 1 release, but it became very hard to find later on. Overall, it didn't really bring the series back, but it was a great way to bring Rock Band forward for fans of it last gen. Right after that, a game that's been delisted from the digital stores, Transformers Devastation for Xbox One and PS4. So pick up a physical copy if you're interested in that. This is Platinum Games' take on Transformers using the original Generation 1 cartoon designs. The game looks incredible and is a great use of the license, with the player controlling Transformers that can transform at any time to get through the stages or pull off flashy combo attacks. Then a little less of a remaster, but another update, Back to the Future the Game, the 30th Anniversary Edition. This is an updated version of the Telltale episodic game that follows up on the Back to the Future film trilogy. The game is more of an adventure game since it was before Walking Dead came out and they really hit their narrative stride with that, but it's definitely worth checking out for fans of the movies and adventure games. The original game was released episodically with 5 episodes released on disc for the PS3 and Wii, but this release for other consoles featured some minor updates, the biggest one being that the voice of Biff from the original game was replaced with the original voice actor Tom Wilson. There's also some small updates to the graphics, and there's some bonus features like interviews included. Following that, for PS4 and Xbox One, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. The latest Rainbow Six game focuses on multiplayer missions instead of a big single-player campaign. The game features 4 multiplayer modes in which 2 teams go against each other, and 1 co-op mode that can also be played solo that features missions with a looser narrative. The game launched with 11 maps, with more maps and an additional game mode added post-release. Right after that, a game I kickstarted on the PC and was glad to double dip for a console version, Wasteland 2: The Director's Cut. This is a sequel to the original turn-based RPG from the 80s. If you don't know, that game is basically what led to the Fallout franchise. This Director's Cut version features new content and a bunch of improvements over the original PC release, and is an incredible old-school PC RPG. I actually enjoyed it way more than I did Fallout 4. Right after that is Adventure Time: Finn and Jake Investigations. The 4th Adventure Time game is a 3D adventure where players control Jake and Finn exploring areas, finding and using items, talking to people, and defeating enemies in combat sequences. The story revolves around a machine found by Jake that prints out investigation requests. The game features 5 different cases for the player to solve. Right after that, Guitar Hero Live. This reboot of the Guitar Hero franchise is a very different take on the series in contrast to Rock Band's update. The game is very different from the previous titles, and uses music videos as the background for each song. The guitar has been completely changed too, now featuring 2 rows of 3 buttons instead of the standard 1 row of 5 buttons. It's definitely an interesting take on the genre, and something different for fans of Guitar Hero, but overall it didn't really reignite interest in the genre. And right after that, for PS4 and Xbox One, we got Assassin's Creed Syndicate. This comes out a year after the buggy release of Unity, and it's a fair step up. Gameplay is similar to the previous game, but much more polished and now taking place in London during the industrial era. The player controls the sibling Fry who fight against Templar corruption in the city from their mobile train hideout. Each character levels up separately and has some specific skills. In general, Evie is more stealthy, while Jacob is more powerful. The game also features a series of World War II missions hidden partway through the game. I really do recommend checking it out. It is one of the better Assassin's Creed games. Following that, for Xbox One and PS4, we got Darksiders 2 Death-initive Edition. Not much to say here, except it's an upgraded version of last gen's Darksiders 2 game with all the DLC bundled in. It does look a bit better, but there's no new content here. And after that, for Xbox One and PS4, we got Divinity Original Sin. This is the award-winning hardcore PC RPG that's finally making its way to consoles. The Kickstarted game changes up the Divinity series quite a bit from its Diablo clone roots to more of a Western tactics RPG. The game has a ton of customization options and in-depth gameplay systems. The story is a prequel to the original Divine Divinity. Overall, if you're into customization and tough but fair RPG gameplay, I highly recommend this game. Moving into November, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. This game refocuses on multiplayer and its zombie mode, but is a step down from the unique campaign aspects introduced in Black Ops 2. The campaign mode does support 4-player co-op and features its own progression system though. The multiplayer mode features traversal updates that are clearly inspired by Titanfall and Advanced Warfare, with the introduction of a thrust pack that allows for boosting and wall running. The Zombies mode is a weird sci-fi fantasy setting with an XP progression system similar to single-player and multiplayer modes. After that, we got Fallout 4. This is the follow-up to Fallout 3 and New Vegas. It features a new storyline which begins before the bombs drop and a new crafting/settlement building system. The game takes place in and around Boston and has the player searching for his lost son while helping out others in the Wasteland and building up your home base. The new power armor system allows the player to customize and use their hulking suit of power armor, but it's only useful as long as you can keep it powered. Overall, it'd be a decent entry in the series if it didn't use the same engine as previous games and feature all the same bugs and technical issues I grew tired with in the last couple games. Limited mod support was added to the console versions much later, so if you're going to play through this, I highly recommend getting the mod patch that does the game developer's job for them and fixes hundreds of small bugs throughout the game. Activating a mod does disable trophy and achievement support, however, so you gotta pick what you want. Following that, we get Need for Speed. This is actually the 22nd game in this series and is a complete reboot of the series. It's a return to the import and tuner culture that made the original Need for Speeds popular. The game has a new focus on the story mode, which includes a different style of driving for 5 different characters and has their stories overlap. The styles include Speed, Style, Crew, Build, and Outlaw. Also for Xbox One and PS4 is Star Wars Battlefront. This is the reboot to the Star Wars Battlefront series that's been developed by the Battlefield team. It feels a lot more like a Battlefield game than a follow-up to the original Battlefronts. Settings include the planets from the original Star Wars trilogy. There are 16 maps which support up to 4 players online. There's also some offline co-op maps. The game appealed to casual Star Wars and gaming fans, but the lack of content, including a single-player story mode and the casual progression system, turned off a lot of players. The last notable game of the year, coming out December 1st for Xbox One and PS4, is Just Cause 3. This is the 3rd game in the Just Cause series and stars the character Rico, who returns to his Mediterranean island homeland to free it from the control of a dictator. Gameplay is similar to the previous game, with the player using a variety of weapons and tools in order to cause all manners of destruction and chaos. The new major tool is a wingsuit, which allows the player to glide further than they could with a parachute. Overall, the game wasn't as well received as Just Cause 2, but it's still a really fun game in its own right and worth checking out. And that's it for my 2015 multi-platform retrospective. I've done a ton of retrospectives for different consoles and game series, and I'm going to do a ton more, so subscribe if you dig this kind of content, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!